Now this section's actually talking to pastors who are running their Sunday school people, okay? Now in a small church like ours, that's normally how it works, is you have a pastor and he runs all the Sunday school classes. He meets with the teachers and he runs it. But in a larger church, you're going to have a Sunday school superintendent. And he's the one who gets together with all the teachers and he's the one that helps them. And then he answers to the pastor. And that way the pastor is not having to deal with all that because he's got other stuff he's got to do, right? So this whole section, we're kind of talking about organization, but we're talking about the pastoral responsibilities here. And here's what you can learn from this is if you're going to be a teacher, these are things you should be having, okay? So letter A, that says a teacher must be physically ready, must be rested, must be physically conditioned, and you need to have a good night of sleep on Saturday nights. Wouldn't you agree? Okay? It's kind of hard to come in and teach a Sunday school class if you've been up all night, you're really wore out, you're bad-tempered because you didn't get any sleep, and you're snapping at people. Well, it doesn't go over real well with kids, okay? So these are some things you should be looking at. Must be mentally ready. Read yourself full religious works. And not just religious works, okay? I'll tell you something that we're really suffering in our society today is people don't read. They really don't read, okay? Now those of us that are preachers, we read all the time. Not just our Bibles. We read our Bibles, but we read a whole bunch of other stuff too. I've already read a couple books this year, in addition to my Bible reading that I do every day, okay? Now, I've been out of work since March because of the COVID thing. Well, since March till now, I've read from Isaiah all the way through the New Testament, started in Genesis, and I'm almost done with Exodus now. So that's what I've been doing the last 3.5 months in my Bible reading, okay? But those of us that are preachers, we're constantly reading, and we read articles on our phones, and we'll read Facebook articles and stuff like that, but we also have books that we read, okay? And if you're going to be a Sunday school teacher, you should read a lot of religious works. Then it talks about number 2 there, read secular material. And it mentions U.S. News, World Report, Human Events, newspapers, Reader's Digest. Okay, why would you say Reader's Digest? Well, I'll tell you one thing. Now, Reader's Digest is actually put out by the Mormons, in case you didn't know, all right? Now, Reader's Digest is a very clean publication. You don't really find a lot of wickedness in it and junk, okay? But it's full of true life stories. And for me, for many years, Reader's Digest had a whole bunch of stories where I could pull stories out and use them in my sermons and my illustrations. Really good human interest stuff, okay? So, but, and they're talking a lot about news and world reports, but, I'll tell you right now, if you're going to be a teacher, how about reading books on teaching? Wouldn't you think? I mean, if you're going to be a teacher and you want to be able to reach people and teach people in a good way, right? Wouldn't you want to know how to teach? And wouldn't you want to be improving your skills? Well, sure, okay? Being a good communicator is a huge thing in being a teacher, isn't it? If you can't speak to people, then how can you teach them? Okay? All right, then letter C there, so you must be spiritually ready. Get secular things done first part of the week. Meet God in the Bible every day. Family devotions. This is huge, okay? If you're here and you're married, you should have family devotions. You really should, okay? Now, my wife and I, we had family devotions from the time that we had our first kids way back when, and we did it all the way through them growing up, okay? And it wasn't until we moved back from the mission field and got here that our family devotions, we had to stop doing them because of our work schedules and conflictions, you know what I'm saying? And so, but our kids grew up in a home where they knew every day Mom and Dad were going to sit down, we were going to open the Bible up, and we were going to have a little Bible study at home. Every day, okay? Very rare did we miss it, okay? Soul winning. Now this is huge. This is huge, right? You should be actively trying to win people to Christ. And there are those people out there that want to be teachers and they want to teach children, but they're not soul winners. They could care less about whether people make it to heaven or not. They could care less about what's going on. They feel like, oh, that's the pastor's job. But the truth is, how can you be a teacher over kids? Because one of the goals is you want to lead those kids to Christ, right? But more so, you also want to reach their parents, or you should, right? But if you're not a soul winner, if you're not one of these people who's even concerned about winning people to Christ, then what good are you? I mean, really, what makes you any different than a secular teacher? Some unsaved, ungodly person who's a school teacher. What makes you any different? Nothing, okay? When there should be, okay? Letter D at the bottom says, must make teaching a 7-day-a-week job. What does that mean? Okay. If you're a Sunday school teacher, that is your ministry, right? You're ministering to those kids. That is your ministry. You got to go visit them. You need to go visit their parents. You need to try to win the parents to Christ. You know, if you're going to have special events. Now, I had special events for my Sunday school class. I had a junior boys camp out one night on our church grounds, not here, but we were in California. We just got a bunch of tents up there, and we had a big camp out. We had 10 acres that we were on, so it was really nice. We were kind of out in the country, so it was really nice. The boys were able to get up there, and we didn't have to take the kids to camp far away. It was just my Sunday school class, and I was able to get some of the young college and career guys in my church to come help me be chaperone. So I wasn't there by myself with 72 kids, right? Okay, 72 boys. And we had a great time. And we did other activities too. We would have parties after church sometimes on the church grounds where we'd serve them. We would have contests between the boys and the girls in our junior church, and the losers had to serve the winners, right? So if the boys won, that meant them girls had to get up and they had to pour the boys Kool-Aid and they had to serve them cookies, and they didn't get any of it. They were there to serve because they lost the contest, or vice versa, okay? So, but here's the deal. If you're a Sunday school teacher, that is your ministry, you got to be thinking about that thing 7 days a week, right? You're planning lessons, right? You're trying to have a direction you're going in. You're praying. You're asking God to show you things. And you don't want to be a boring teacher or a teacher who doesn't know how to reach their kids. So you need to be reading and meditating and thinking and that whole thing to keep yourself in that frame of mind to minister to these kids, right? All right, next page. Think about class members and individual needs. Now, when I was teaching the junior boys, like I told you all before, I had 72 boys in my Sunday school class. I had some that couldn't read. So I knew automatically that some of the boys in my class, what was one of the needs they had? Learn to read. They need to be educated. But I would never call on them to stand up and read a portion of the Bible. Why? Oh, embarrass them, yeah, and I wouldn't want to embarrass the boys because, you don't, if you embarrass them, they may never come back. You're not there to do that. You damage them, So you got to think about your class members and the individual needs, okay? Think about your classroom being full, right? And I get so tired of hearing people saying, well, if I had a better classroom, I had a better this or better that, then I could have more kids in my class. Baloney, okay? I had 72 boys in my class, and we met on a school bus. Hot in the summer, cold in the winter. We met on a school bus. But I had 72 faithful boys, and their parents wanted them there. Okay? So, think about your classroom being full. Number 4, think pure thoughts. Oh yes, you need to be thinking pure thoughts, right? Number 5, you must discipline yourself regarding TV and secular reading material, because both can have a bad effect on you. You do realize that, right? TV programs, what do they show you? They show you how lost people live, and they show you lost people's approach on stuff. That's what it shows you, okay? So when I had my kids growing up, we didn't have a TV for many years. Then we finally got one. I think my kids were pre-teen at the time when we got it. But we were very limited in what we showed, right? And very selective. And then I would teach them, like when Little Mermaid came out, right? Everyone's like, oh, that's such a cute little cartoon and everything. Well, if you think about it, Little Mermaid teaches kids that it's okay to rebel against their parents and even though some bad things happen, it'll all turn out okay in the end. Well, that's not how life works. Sometimes bad things happen and it's bad for a long time, and it doesn't get better, right? So I taught my kids, when that Little Mermaid came out, I taught them, well, look, she lied to her daddy, she's dishonest, she's this, she's that, and look at all the trouble she got into. She could have avoided all that if she just would have obeyed, been the right kind of kid, okay? So even though something says it's Disney, you better be careful, because Disney is not, there's subtleties there. There's subtleties that they show and teach your kids, and then when your kids start getting mouthy with you and back-talking you and sassing, you're kind of wondering, where are they getting that from? Disney, of all places, right? And now Disney, the new stuff that's coming out, they're including the lesbianism, the homosexuality, and they're including all that in there. So what's it teaching your kids? That all that's okay, and it's not okay, is it? Okay? So you need to discipline yourself regarding TV and even the secular reading material that you're reading, okay? Because again, it shows you how lost people think about things, how they approach things. And if you're not careful, it programs your thinking, doesn't it? Well, we don't want that. We want to get away from that. We want our thinking to be programmed by God, okay? All right, number 6, it says, think about loving your students. That's something to think about. How do you love your students? Now, it's one thing to come in and tell you guys, oh, I love you guys. And I did that frequently in my Sunday school class. Say, I love you guys, I appreciate you, you know, because I wanted them to know that at least some adult in their life liked them and was there to help them, okay? But words are not just enough. You got to do things to show them, which is why I would visit them at their homes. If I show up on a Saturday or one night during the week, what does it tell that kid? Oh yeah, I care about you. And when they see I have a good relationship with the parents, what does it tell them? That your mom and myself, or your mom and dad and myself, we're all on the same page regarding you. Okay? So that's something to think about. How do you love your students? How can you communicate that to them? Do special projects for them, right? Okay. Pray daily for each pupil. That's something to think about. Why? Because that Sunday school class is your ministry. Can the preacher sit there and minister to them kids? No, because the pastor's busy trying to minister to all the adults, and he's trying to watch over all the ministries of a church, isn't he? But he can't be there personally in each ministry supervising it 24 hours a day, can he? Okay? So since this is your ministry and God's given it to you, you need to be praying for those students every day, okay? Then it talks about the 7 laws of teaching, and we'll get into that after a while, okay? Promote future events, special days, back to school, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Memorial Day, Promotion Day, Baby Day, Neighbor Day, etc., 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 okay? Now, why would you want to promote special days in your Sunday school class? Something to look forward to? What else?
Maybe encouraging a visitor to come on a certain day.
Yeah, try to get visitors to come on a certain day. What else? Might be the only celebrating that they see or experience. Okay. Well, we all know that Mother's Day is a big thing every year, right? So if you have the younger kids like Miss Roberta and Miss Cynthia are back in these Sunday school classrooms back here in the building behind us. So if they're looking at Mother's Day coming up, it might be a good idea for them to have some kind of arts and crafts thing where they can put something together to make something nice for Mom on Mother's Day. And that does 2 things. Number 1, it teaches that child to be thinking about having respect for their parents, right? And it conditions them and teaches them that, hey, this is a special day set aside in our country where we honor our moms and our dads or whatever, okay? But the second thing it does is it shows those parents that you are teaching their kids to what? Honor them, respect them, okay? So in other words, you're ministering to the child and to the parents at the same time with one little project, if that makes sense, okay? All right, evangelistic meetings. Sunday school push should be strong for Sunday. Monday night should be Sunday school night. Now, evangelistic meetings, you kind of have to play this by ear, okay? Now, years ago, we don't do this a whole lot in our churches anymore, but years ago, we would have week-long revivals where every night, the preacher would be preaching. You'd have an evangelist come in and preach every night. Okay? Well, it's kind of hard to get off work and go pick them kids up and bring them to church, isn't it? It just, people don't have the time. Okay? You can barely get off work in time to make it to church yourself, much less try to run a bus and pick up kids. But you may have one or two kids that are willing to come, who want to come. Maybe they kind of stand out from some of the other kids in the class. Well, if they want to come, then maybe swing by and pick them up on the way home or something. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Missions conferences. Well, that's another big thing, right? Get those kids exposed to missionaries. And maybe have a missionary, if we have several missionaries come in, if they're not in there. We used to do this too, where we had a missions conference and you'd have 4 or 5 missionary families in your church for the whole week. Well, it was real possible back then to have one missionary family go in one Sunday school class, have another missionary family go in another Sunday school class, and they would teach a Sunday school class for you. Well, what does that do? Well, it gets those kids thinking about missions, being used of God to go to foreign lands and give out the gospel, right? It plants that seed in there, and it's a good thing, okay? Of course, the next one, special meetings, they talk about missions conferences, special speakers, college groups, okay? Now, the society we live in today, this is a little bit harder because we work so much, don't we? And it's a rat race just to get home in the evenings, get cleaned up, and get to church if we have meetings at church every night. So what we've done here in our church, we don't have a missions conference for a week. We have a missions emphasis month, and every Sunday during that month we have a different missionary family come in. They teach the Sunday school hour in there, and they teach the morning service, and we try to have our Sunday school classes come in and sit in there during that time. Why? Well, again, exposure. Let them get to see that missionary. Think about missions, okay? All right. Promote campaigns. Now remember, this material we're covering is from the aspect of a pastor trying to get his Sunday school teachers to do these things, right? So the takeaway for you guys is if you become a Sunday school teacher, these are things you have to think about doing as a Sunday school teacher, okay? You need to promote campaigns. Now what's a campaign? It says it can be purchased or designed in-house, duration 6 to 10 weeks. Now, what a lot of churches used to do was in the fall, when all the kids returned back to school, they would have what's called a fall push. And they might have a contest for a month or 6 weeks. Whoever brings the most visitors in during that time. Well, with kids, you could challenge them, okay, the person, and you can make it have 3 things involved where you got to bring your Bible every Sunday. You're going to get a certain number of points every Sunday you bring a Bible. And then if you bring a visitor, you get more points. And have some kind of a really nice prize. And then for 4 weeks or 6 weeks, whichever kid amasses the most points wins that prize. Something like that. That's a campaign, okay? So the goal is that every Sunday school class should have assigned goals. Take a 3-month average total of Sunday school, determine how much of an increase you want for duration of the campaign, which becomes your goal. Average each Sunday school class attendance for the last 3 months, and then apply the percentage goal to their average, which becomes their goal for the campaign. The whole goal years ago in having campaigns in your church was to boost your attendance. Get people back into church. Okay? And when I was a kid, most people went to church. I was raised atheist, so me and my brother and my dad, we were one of the few people who stayed home on Sundays. On my block, there was only 3 of us at home on Sunday mornings. Myself, my dad, my brother, and then 2 other families on the block were the only ones there on Sunday morning because everyone else went to church. Okay? Well, now it's the opposite. Very few people go to church and most people don't. That's how far we come in this country, okay? So the idea with a campaign, it's a little bit harder to promote it this way, but to have some kind of a push where you try to have people bring in visitors and offer. The reason I got saved was a lady I worked with. The church she went to was having a contest for a home interiors picture. She really wanted that. It was a big picture too, big, really nice looking, right? And she wanted that for her house. And she wanted it so bad, and we were all working at a roller skating rink, then she invited a whole bunch of us kids, several of us that worked there, and then a bunch of the kids that skated there. She invited us all to come to her church because she wanted to win that thing. That's how I got saved. was a Sunday school campaign. Well, it wasn't a Sunday school, but it was a campaign for the church. And whoever had the most visitors during that 4-week time frame won that picture. And of course, this lady, Miss Karen, then invited me. She won it because for 4 weeks she had 22 people the first Sunday she brought with her, right? Then the next week it dropped down to like 15. Third week dropped down to 7, but that last week she had 24, right? Well, she brought the most visitors, okay? And she wasn't even the most spiritual person in that church. In fact, she didn't agree with half the things the church taught.
She wanted a picture.
She wanted that picture, right? And she got it, okay? So campaigns can be positive, I mean, depending on how they're ran, okay? So just be advised, whether you do Sunday school here or whether you do Sunday school in a different church, churches sometimes have campaigns, and you have to get on board with it as a teacher and promote it and try to work your best with it, right? All right, next page. All right. Now you should see a diagram there at the top. It says a system for delegating authority. On the left-hand side, you're going to see where it says God, then Moses, ruler of thousands, ruler of hundreds, ruler of 50s, ruler of tens, and then the people. Now here's what happened. If you read Exodus chapter 18, if you want to write that down on there, you can put Exodus chapter 18 because that's where this comes from, okay? Moses, when he went down into Egypt to bring the children of Israel out, if you read the story, partway through during that time, he had to take his wife and his children and send them back to the father-in-law, back to her dad, Jethro, the priest of Midian, okay? And had to send him back there because it was getting too dangerous for them to stay in Egypt with him, okay? So after they come out of Egypt, right, and they're in the wilderness, Jethro shows up with Moses' wife and the 2 sons and brings them back to him, okay? And the next day, Moses gets up, and from early in the morning till late at night, because he's the judge over the whole nation, right? People are bringing issues to him like a court, and he's having to make decisions and judgments in their lives, okay? Well, Jethro watched all this, and he pulled Moses aside and he said, now look, let me give you some advice that can help you. He said, what you need to do are find out men that you trust, men that are good report, men with good character, men who know God and know the Bible. And then you appoint these men and make them rulers over thousands, rulers over hundreds, 50s, 10s, okay? And he said, and let them hear the smaller matters, and the only matters that come to you are the real hard ones. And you make those decisions. He said, that way it doesn't wear you out and it doesn't wear the people out. It was really good advice, wasn't it? Okay? And the Lord actually blessed it. Okay? Now on the right-hand side of that same page, you kind of see how this brother Davis set up his Sunday school in his church, where he shows God, the pastor. They actually had a Sunday school superintendent. Now their church ran about 1,000 people. Okay, and this is back in 1989, about 1989. Okay, he was running about 1,000 people. He had no bus ministry. He just had, their main thrust was Sunday school.
What's a bus ministry?
Okay, a bus ministry is where a church has buses and they go out into the areas and pick up kids and bring them to church. Okay, so in today's world, typically it's only your independent Baptists who have bus ministries. We have one, okay? We have our 2 shuttle buses out there, okay? But most churches don't do it anymore. Southern Baptists used to do it, and some of your Protestant churches used to do it years ago. But today, the truth is, it's only some of your independent Baptist churches that still have bus ministry, okay? However, what this man did, because the area he lived in, he reached his area by having this organized Sunday school set up the way he did. Because your Sunday school teachers were going out doing lots of visiting in the community, so he never had to have a church visitation night for everyone to show up and go out visiting. Or like we do, we go out once a month and we take everyone that shows up on that 4th Saturday and we go out and hang door hangers or knock on doors, okay? Well, because his Sunday school teachers had to be active and they had to go visiting, Their community was fully reached because of all these Sunday school teachers going out and visiting. Make sense? Okay? So that's what I'm just briefly explaining to you, this diagram you're looking at. Okay, go to the next page now. Now, here's a system for delegating authority in smaller churches. Okay? On the left-hand side are new churches and small churches. You're going to have the Lord speaking to the pastor organizing the teachers, and then the teachers teaching the kids. Okay? If you look on the right-hand side, it talks about medium-sized churches. God, the pastor, and then we talked about a Sunday school superintendent earlier, didn't we? Okay? Now, in our church right now, pretty much me and Brother Kevin run the Sunday schools. Okay? More Kevin than myself. But we're the ones that overlook it and see it. Okay? So, but then we have the teachers and then the people. Okay, next page. Now we're looking at graphs, okay? And you look there, it's talking about Sunday school attendance. You got illustration number 1, illustration number 2, and illustration number 3. Now, if you look at illustration number 1, the bottom one, what can you tell me about that Sunday school class? They were growing. Now, if you notice, they had spikes and dips, didn't they? Okay? Some Sundays are like that. You're going to have some Sundays where a bunch of kids show up, and there's other Sundays you're not going to have hardly anybody show up. Why is that? Usually it's broken homes. A lot of it is the kids can come on one Sunday, but the next Sunday they have to be with the other parent. Okay? And we understand that. We're not degrading anybody. I'm just explaining why some Sundays can be more well attended than others. Okay? And there's other reasons. Sometimes people take vacations, there's sickness, okay, different things like that. Okay? But overall, if you look at illustration number 1, even with spikes and then dips and other spikes, generally this class is growing, isn't it? Okay? Now, it would be nice that if you're a Sunday school teacher, that every child who comes to your class stays with you during the years that you have them. But that is a fallacy. There are some kids that are going to leave your Sunday school class, they're going to break your heart, they're going to leave and never come back. And it is heartbreaking because you know that child wanted to come, but maybe the parent said no. It'll break your heart, okay? But illustration number 1 shows a class that's growing. Okay, look at number 2. What can you tell me about number 2?
Staying steady.
It's not growing, is it?
Not growing.
Okay. So what are we looking at there? Got to do something different, right? Now, a Sunday school class can sometimes go through some hard times. It's possible to have one child leave and they drag a bunch of kids with them. That's possible, which means you're back to square one trying to build that class back up, okay? But here's the thing you got to realize, okay? If you're a Sunday school teacher, when do you stop building your class? Never. What's this guy doing or this lady doing who's teaching this Sunday school class? They're not trying to build their class, they're trying to maintain. In other words, here's what they're saying. I am comfortable with this number of kids and I don't want to go past this. What is wrong with that concept? Not reaching them. Not a soul-winning attitude. Okay? Now, when I told you guys before, when I started my Sunday school class, I only had like 23 in my class. But I went from 23 to 72. And we were packed out. That bus was packed out. Right? Well, I was never content, even though the class was growing, I was never content to let it just what? Maintain. Number 2 shows a person who teaches, they lose some kids, they go out and grab a few new ones, right? And it's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Okay? Now here's the bad part. Teachers like this, normally they feel good about themselves, and sometimes they think highly about themselves, unfortunately, and they feel like they're the best thing that could happen for those kids, when the reality is they're not. They're not the best thing for those kids. Okay? Now look at the illustration number 3. What do we see there?
Way down.
Okay, it grows, it's going really good, then it plateaus out, then what? Why? Why would it take a sudden turn and just dive like that? Okay.
Maybe it became boring practice.
Okay? Typically, I'm not saying this is true in every case, but typically, you have people who have people skills. They know how to be friendly. They know how to be funny. They know how to meet people. They don't know any strangers, those types. Okay? And they're real good about meeting people, being funny, being charming, and getting people together. And their class will grow. Then it peaks out. Why? Well, because the whole class is not being built on spiritual values and spiritual issues. It's being built on the personality of that teacher. How charming they are, how funny they are, their people skills. Then when it takes a sharp dive, it's usually because of sin in the life of that teacher. Because what happens is this charming person, their true character, what? Finally comes out. And I can give you illustration after illustration after illustration, okay? I mean, I've been a preacher for 35 years, 37 years, okay? So I can give you a lot of examples. We had a bus route in California in our church, and it was on the military base, right? And it started off with one bus, okay? And then it grew to where it had 4 buses, I think it was, on the base picking up kids. That thing was just going great guns, right? And the preacher boy, because there was a whole bunch of us in that church, we were going through that Bible Institute, we were all being trained for the ministry, okay? And the preacher boy that was running that ministry, boy, he was just going great guns, right? And we had to keep adding buses to his bus route. And then he had bus captains on each of those buses, right? And he's helped pushing them, directing them, and getting them going. And everything's going real great. Okay? And a lot of the kids, I'd say almost half the kids in my Sunday school class, half the boys that were in my Sunday school class came off his bus route. Okay? And when I went out visiting, I had to usually go with him like about 2 Saturdays in a row to hit all the boys that were in my Sunday school class on the base. Okay? Well, all of a sudden, he just stopped coming. Well, turns out that the whole time all this was going on, that on Friday nights he's slipping over to the bars. He's married. Started picking up on women. Started doing some drugs on the side, right? Nobody knew this. He was still coming to church. He was dressing right, acting right, talking right. Nobody suspected anything. Until all of a sudden he just stopped coming. What do you think happened to his bus route? Exactly what you're seeing on this graph. Because it finally, his sin was getting exposed. Okay? It's a huge responsibility to be a Sunday school teacher. It really is. Some people take the responsibility so lightly, and then when they get involved in sin, they excuse away their sin. Well, you can't do that. Years ago in this church, we had a Sunday school teacher who was over the teens. And he would like to bring the teen boys over to his house to have, like on Friday nights where they have a slumber party over there. And they would have the teen boys, they would have like hot dogs, hamburgers, they'd grill, and They'd sit around and watch some movies, and then on Saturdays, their parents come pick them up and they'd go home. And nobody thought anything, okay? Until it got found out that they were not watching very good movies. Yeah. And then them teen boys started getting in trouble because of the bad movies they were watching. And of course, he had to be removed from being a Sunday school teacher. And that was here in this church years ago, okay? And furthermore, some of these teen boys were sneaking out and meeting with girls, hooking up. He knew about it, but never told any of the parents about it. Now, being a Sunday school teacher, it doesn't matter what age group you have. It is a huge spiritual responsibility. You need to walk with the Lord. You need to be honest. I mean, just have a good, honest Christian walk with God. Nothing secret, nothing hidden. Open book before everybody. Okay? This is a huge thing, okay? So that third illustration, that's kind of what you're looking at there. Something tragic was happening in the life of that Sunday school teacher, and it affected that class, didn't it? In a real bad way, okay? All right, next page. Now, here's another graph, but this graph shows 3 years of the same Sunday school class. What do you see? It's growing every year. Now, we don't have the colors on here. I'm sorry, I didn't have a color printer to run this off for you, okay? But 1982 is the bottom one. This person averaged over 100 people in their Sunday school class each week for 15 weeks, didn't they? And that was 1982. 1983, they started off with 200 people in their Sunday school class and then finished out the year, or that 15 weeks, at 400 in their Sunday school class. And this is just illustration purposes, okay? Because that's a mighty big Sunday school class to have 400 people in. Right? Okay. But the whole I take that back. I'm sorry. This is showing, it's not showing one Sunday school class. It's showing the Sunday school program for a church over 3 years. I'm sorry. So this was all the Sunday schools totaled for 3 years. Okay? So every year, each of their Sunday school classes was growing. And the ones that weren't growing, the other ones were growing so much that they made up for the numbers of the ones that weren't growing. Okay? So I'm sorry about that. That was my fault on that. Okay? But what they're showing you is that for 3 years here, that church, their Sunday school attendance was growing each year. Okay? All right, next page. Grace Baptist Church Teachers Covenant. All right. Now, if you notice at the bottom they had a place to sign. The teachers in this church were required to read this and sign to it. Why? Accountability. In other words, this church was telling each of its teachers, here's our standards, here's what we expect, here's what you must live up to. Don't take this lightly. And then those teachers would sign it, saying that they do agree to follow this. Let's read down through there. Number 1, I believe that God has definitely called me to the task of teaching. Okay? Now, some of you here might be saying, well, you know, Brother Steve, I don't feel like God's calling me to be a Sunday school teacher. Why don't you start off just being a helper? Helping out in a Sunday school class. That's a great place to start. Okay? Because as a helper, you can learn about different age groups and be a helper in those Sunday school classes. Those teachers need it. They need help sometimes. Okay? It's a good place to start. But if you're going to be the Sunday school teacher of that class, then you better be there because you really believe God wants you there to be in that position, okay? Number 2, I am a member in good standing of the Grace Baptist Church. Now, no church in its right mind would let outside people come in and be Sunday school teachers. It should be your own people, members of your own church. Why?
You should know the history
Yeah, you should know who the people are, what their histories are, okay? And then if they don't meet these requirements, then you can let them go. Now the issue is if you let people from an outside church come in and become Sunday school teachers in your church, and there's some kind of an issue with the covenant and you're trying to get rid of them, they can actually take you to court to keep you from getting rid of them. Wow. But if they are members of your church, guess what? They can't do that. Okay? All right, number 3, I do maintain a consistent Christian testimony which will include A, regular attendance at all the services of the church, including Sunday school, morning and evening services, prayer meeting, and special services. Now, in our church, we have a kind of a relaxed approach on this only because of the work that we do. Several of us work in the plants. So this whole last year, Carl, how many Wednesday nights was I here last year?
Rare.
It was rare because I had to work overtime most Wednesday nights, okay? But my preacher knew where I was at. He knew what I was doing. I was here Sunday morning. I was here Sunday nights. I would try to make it here on the Saturday deals, whatever we had going on, okay? So I wasn't diminishing my participation. And what church I was missing, my pastor is aware of where I'm at. Now what happens when a Sunday school teacher all of a sudden just starts kind of skipping out on church and the pastor has no idea what's going on with them?
Chaos.
Chaos, yeah, it's not a good thing, is it, okay? So when it says regular attendance, okay, if you miss some of the services, but the pastor knows where you're at, it's fine. But when nobody knows where you're at, and we don't know what you're up to, well, now you become suspect. And we got to watch that because we just can't let anybody work with kids. Child molesters target churches because it's easy access to kids. Now here in our church, something we do, when people want to be Sunday school teachers, I know we used to run background checks on them. Okay, and I think preacher still does. So that's something to think about, okay? Letter B, abstinence from the use of questionable speech. Tobacco. Oh. So people that are smokers. This is not a good thing. Because if you're a smoker, you're not a good example in front of them kids, are you? Okay? Use of intoxicating beverages. Attendance at worldly amusements such as movies and dances. Okay? I have not been to a movie theater since 1984. Last time I ever went to a movie theater. Why? Here's why. Because I'm a preacher. If I go into a movie theater, I could be going to a rated G movie, but there's rated R movies playing in the same theater, aren't there? People have no idea which movie I'm going to, do they? Number 2, if I go into a movie, and let's say it's rated PG, and something bad comes across the screen, can I turn it off? Oh, you can't. In other words, I have no control over the atmosphere. Now, if I'm at home and I'm watching TV and something bad comes on, what do? Turn it off or change the channel? Why? Because I'm in control of that environment, aren't I? Okay? So I don't go to the movies. Haven't been to the movie theater since 1984. I don't miss it. I don't care. If I catch a movie and I think something's kind of neat and it might be a decent movie, I'll wait for it to come out on video and I might rent it. And then I'll look at it before I tell people, oh yeah, that's a good movie. Because it may not be a good movie. Right? Okay. But you want to, and it says the last part there says, in such things that endanger or destroy your testimony. Letter C, faithful and regular giving to the Grace Baptist Church and its ministry. The scriptural standards that a believer should contribute at least a tithe of his income to the work of his own church. Now, what we press for in our church is that every Sunday school teacher, number 1, has to be a tither. You have to give your tithe. And then number 2, you need to be giving to missions too. That's the 2 main giving programs we have in our church. Tithing and giving to missions. Okay? Your pastor does it. I do it. Brother Kevin does it. Brother Ron does it. Most of us here that have been here for any length of time, most of us are tithers and give to missions, and we give special offerings too, okay? So typically most years, between my wife and I, we give 20 to 25% of our income back into the church through missions and tithe, okay? I'm not saying that you guys have to do that, but I'm just saying you have leadership here that we've set down that example for you, Okay? Now, why wouldn't we want a teacher who doesn't tithe? Okay, well, what the Bible says is that that person's robbing God. Robbing is where you take a weapon and you hold somebody up and steal from them. That's robbery. That's not burglary. Burglary is where you break into a house and nobody's home. Break into a car and nobody's there. You break into a car or a house where somebody's there, it becomes robbery. And Malachi, what it says, will a man rob God? He said, you know, and of course the reply was, yeah, you've robbed me, even this whole nation. You've all robbed me. That's what God said, okay? So people who don't tithe usually don't make the best honest teachers. They don't, okay? Now here's the thing, is if I'm walking with God and I'm tithing, I'm giving, God's going to supply my needs. He'll also supply the needs for my Sunday school class. Now when I was dirt poor and I couldn't afford anything, and me and my wife had 3 kids, and I'm going through Bible school, I'm working a full-time job, going through Bible school, we barely can make ends meet. I would pray every week and say, God, I need candy for my Sunday school class or for junior church. And guess what? The Lord always gave me money, and I was always able to provide for my Sunday school class. Because He gave it to me. Why? Because I was practicing what I was preaching. Make sense? Okay? Yes, sir.
Testimony real quick.
Sure.
Saturday, last Sunday, Sunday school kids, they kind of all like got together. They didn't want to do it, so it kind of hurt, you know. Well, anyways, I was thinking all week how to get them back and get them into it. And then something popped up in my head, you know, feed them, you gotta feed them. So I was okay. I'll get them a pizza, you know, something like that. Well, that morning I go to the store, and the lady, like the manager lady, she had a whole bunch of candy and stuff sitting on her desk, waiting to give it away. And I was just having to walk up, so I got all that candy. Then I bought 1 pizza, okay, Domino's, and some breadsticks. I go there, and they gave me 2 more pizzas. So I'm
Praise the Lord.
That just happened.
Exactly.
Just happened.
Okay. All right. Number 4 there says, I will take part in the regular visitation program of the church and attend faithfully. Now, if you're a Sunday school teacher, it'd be a good idea for you to go out visiting your Sunday school class every week. Now, if you only got 3 or 4 kids in your class, I wouldn't go visit them every week. Okay? But what you could do, because since you're that kind of Sunday school teacher where you're trying to build your class, you ought to go out on that bus visitation with Brother Carl and Brother Chris when they go out. Because if I go out with them and I help them door knock new areas, what am I doing? I'm going to be meeting people that potentially will become kids in my Sunday school class. And if they don't become children in my Sunday school class, they'll become children in somebody else's Sunday school class, right? And will God still bless me even though I'm helping to build somebody else's Sunday school class? Oh, yes. Wonderfully so. So if I'm teaching juniors, I go out visiting and I got some children's church kids to start coming, right? Well, these kids that are between the ages of 5 and 8, eventually guess whose class they're going to come into if I teach the 9, 10, 11-year-olds? Eventually they're going to come into mine, aren't they? So is there anything wrong with me building that younger Sunday school class up? No, because eventually those kids are going to what? Come into my class. Okay? All right. Number 5 there says, I will endeavor to maintain regular private devotions. Oh, read your Bibles daily, right? Which will include praying for the leaders, officers, and members of Grace Baptist Church. And then number 6, my objectives will be to know each member of my class individually and to pray for them. Letter B, to win them to Christ and into the membership of this church. Letter C, to give them a definite knowledge of the Bible. Letter D, to inspire them to consistent Christian living by my life. E, to lead them into Christian service. Then number 7, I will cooperate loyally with the entire program of the Grace Baptist Church and Sunday School. Okay? Some churches have church covenants for Sunday school teachers, so just be aware of that, okay? All righty. A Sunday school visitation program, how it works. Okay, on Sunday, each teacher carefully and accurately checks attendance cards for his class and gets name and addresses of each visitor on a visitor's card. Monday, the church secretary checks attendance and visitor card and then makes visitation cards in duplicate for each pupil. Now, our church is not big enough to have this thing happen right here. Okay? So if you're a Sunday school teacher, whose job is it to record that child's information down that they visited your class? That teacher. And if that teacher's smart, if them kids came on the bus route, go talk to the bus captain and get their information. Who the mom is, who the dad is, what their phone numbers are, what their address is. Why? Now here's what I used to do. When I had a young junior boy come to my class for the first time, I had all his info. Because the bus captains, I get with them, make sure I had it. I would send a thank you card. You can buy a bunch of them at Walmart real cheap. I would send a thank you card to the parents, thanking them for sending their child to Sunday school and introducing myself as their Sunday school teacher. Right? Then I would try to either that week or the next week actually go visit the house. Why? Because it shows those parents, number one, I am a Sunday school teacher. I am ministering to your child. I'm the one that God's put there, and I am concerned about your child and your family. Now that's how come I grew from 23 to 72. There was a lot of private time where I went out and visited. I put the miles in. Okay? Now, this church, they're talking about this church secretary doing all these cards. Then on Monday, they send a welcome letter to each of the visitors. And then during the week, teachers, number 4 there, during the week, teachers are responsible to pick up any cards for their class, post it on bulletin board, and contact those persons during the week. Okay? They talk about the second week, the third week, but here's the truth. In a church like ours where we're small, okay, a larger church can operate this way, but a smaller church doesn't. Now, I'm not going to sit there and wait. Let's suppose we have a huge church of 1,000 people. And let's suppose I'm waiting on that church secretary to go through all the visitors' cards, fill everything out, hoping that pastor writes that letter and gets the welcome letter out to the parents, right? Then sometime during that week, I've got a little cubby hole over here where they put the visitors' cards in, and I go snag it out of my cubby hole to go visit my class. Okay? Now, in a bigger church like that, is it possible that things don't get done? Oh yeah, real possible, isn't it? Okay? Anytime you have a large bureaucracy, many moving parts in it, okay? As a Sunday school teacher, I never relied on that. Never. Why? Because that Sunday school class was my Sunday school class. I knew who came and visited. I personally wrote them a letter. I personally would go visit the parents. And so those parents, we actually had parents who came to church because of their boys being in my Sunday school class. And some of them parents got saved. Some of them parents stayed in the church. Their boys stayed in the church and went through our teen group, graduated from high school, even though they were in public school, still in our church. Why? Because as a Sunday school teacher, I put that work and effort into it. Okay? So we're going to have to stop right here. But, you know, during this week, go ahead and read down through some of this stuff. There's some good ideas in here about how to approach stuff. And we come back, we're going to be on this page at number 5 there.